Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Thrive Like a Parent podcast. I am giving you an intro for today because I did this podcast on a day where I was shooting some content for a facial product, and I did not know when doing that I had to wear this mask for 8 hours. Yes, I said eight. So I'm giving you a heads up before your eyes go bug-eyed and you see me with white all over my face. But I am doing this podcast with Laura Day, who I've done a podcast with before. I love her. She was such a good sport. She put on a mask too, to hydrate her skin, and the conversation is amazing. So giving you a heads up, ignore the white all over my skin, but we didn't want to cancel because it was such an awesome conversation and I always love spending time with her. So without further ado, enjoy the podcast. If you are joining from YouTube or anywhere you can see us, it looks like pudding on my face, white pudding, but I got a peel today and I did not realize that this would be on my face for 8 hours. But Laura is awesome, and Laura was loving it and said, how fun, let's do it, even though. So I appreciate that, Laura.
And I have my own mask, my friend Dr. Nigma Talib's mask. So while we were saying hello, I'm just going to put my mask on.
Thank you for doing that. I love that. How fun. For those of you who are listening in, Laura Day has been on our podcast before and you absolutely loved it. And so I'm so excited that Laura is back. Number one, because I loved our conversation and we have so much more to talk about, and we've been wanting to do another podcast forever. I love that. But also, Laura has a brand new book that we want to talk about while we're girl timing it up with our facial masks on, right? I love it. Laura, thank you so much for coming back on. Oh, look at that.
I have to plug this. This is my friend Dr. Nigma Talib's mask. She is like this amazing naturopath. And this is the treatment mask number one. And so I thought, well, my favorite mask, like before makeup, since I'm allergic to everything. So it fills my skin before they do hair and makeup, which really just makes me have 10,000 hives, which is so attractive on camera. So I love this mask. Okay, now.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for being back. Please tell everyone a little bit about yourself and give them the cliff noted versions, because you've done so much and you've been, and you've just, your biography is decades long, right? But I would love for you to just share the cliff note version of who you are and what makes you you.
Well, my biography is decades long because my life is more than half a century long. Last weekend, I turned 66. And I'm a practicing intuitive, which is a nice word for a psychic. In my early 20s, I got into a group of researchers who were testing extrasensory perception, things like viewing a remote location or telling the future or going into a human body and seeing what was going on. And because I'm from both a medical family, 3 generations of physicians, and a crazy family, 2 generations of suicides, I really felt that I wanted to be very careful about my boundaries. And I certainly didn't want to be identified as anything other than normal, whatever that is. I mean, you guys are also lucky. You live in a era where you're redefining what normal is. Now I know I'm not neurotypical. That didn't exist in the 60s.
Totally.
So I make my living predicting the future for large companies. I work with 4 companies at a time. I teach people how to use their extrasensory perception, their non-local perception, in their businesses and their love lives, to be better professionals in whatever they're doing. And I've written 7 books. I just got the final copy. This beautiful book is my 7th book. And after writing 6 books, on 3 on intuitive development, 1 on really how do we make our operating program subconscious, but allow intuition to continue to find us what we need. one on crisis, because I think that the key to life is being able to handle those moments when you're laid low, and there's a lot of opportunity in those moments, although I personally would prefer to learn through ease. So it's a book about that. This book, this is a book that I'm from a family of four children, two of whom suicided. My mother suicided, her brother suicided. We are not made for staying alive, and I really realized at a certain point that this was what saved my life. This is what made me made me different, and not kind of my extraordinary intuition. That is a blip of neurology, which a lot of things are, but that this process was given to me when I was so young I couldn't have read this book. And so I wanted to, I think this is my last self-help book. My next one is memoir. And I really wanted to give people a way to create their lives. I mean, there's so much improving yourself going on, but that's ends up often being punitive. I mean, if I see one more person drinking a green drink instead of eating a meal, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, everything, we've structured ourselves into such a joyless existence in many ways. And um, and so I really, when I write a book, I had an experience when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, where I went to the Ozarks, where there was a lot of poverty. And it was the first time I really realized that there were people who didn't have doctors, who didn't have even teachers, who didn't have books, who didn't have shoes, who didn't have, I'm so grateful for that experience. And in a sense, every book I write assuming that someone doesn't have all of the privileges that even the least privileged of us have, for example, in a large city.
Mm-hmm.
So I wrote, the Prism, all my books are a process. None of them are reading books. And the Prism is really about, forget about, we're all looking for where we've been traumatized. Believe me, try to do something new. Where you've been traumatized is going to meet you. You don't have to look for it. So the Prism is about, what do you want? Pick 3 goals. What do you want in your life? Let's move forward together. And here's how those centers of energy would have worked if your first from conception to age 7 had been fine. Here's how to
Mm.
fix them now in the process of daily living. I know that's very long. You have to interrupt me, but Brooke, don't you remember?
No, no, I love. No, no, you keep going.
I'm the
You're
monologue
keep
queen.
going.
So this is about, how do we engage this innate ability of intuition, which is the ability to know anything, anywhere, from any perspective, at any point in time. How do we engage it in a positive way? But how do we also, you know, correct the prism of our ego? And
Yeah.
our ego is anything that makes you I. It's been so maligned. But your ego is what makes you unique. It is the work you
Mm-hmm.
really do for all of us. And
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in the self-help spiritual industry now for over 40 years. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have been pond slime multiple times. If you haven't ruined your life at least once, then I don't think you're really doing the work. Um,
Yeah.
and the what we have to offer one another are those tools to be resilient, those tools, not to be strong. Because when someone else tells me I'm strong, it's really often kind of a screw you. It's a, like, I can
Mm.
dump that on you, or yeah, this happened, but not about,
You have no other like you have no choice. Like you know what I mean?
right?
Like what else are you supposed to do when you're faced with something? You have no other choice than to be strong and keep going.
Actually,
And
we
yes,
both
people
had,
say that, but like.
Brooke, we both had the experience of the other choice, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
I have a question for you. So in my learning and my knowledge, like when I went to school, what they teach or what they used to teach was that from 0 to 5, excuse me, your brain is neuroplastic. So that's truly when things are really shaking and grooving and developing and all the things. Clearly, now we know that your brain can continue to morph and grow and learn and all the different things past the age of 5. But what is that number for you in terms of 7? Why
So
7?
7 from conception, because you do have to deal with your genetics. And of course, we now know epigenetics, your genetics is not the law, but it certainly is what you start with. The reason age 6 or 7, and I think it really depends on your intellectual development and your executive function development, is that before age 6 or 7, your intellectual being has nothing to compare the data that's being fed to you too. So the truths of your life are the truths that you're being fed. You can't say, oh, wait, um, you know, physical abuse is not okay. You've known nothing else. You can't say, oh, wait, I do have good qualities. If all you've been shown, you haven't been shown that kind of unconditional love. Like you have no intellectual way of filtering the input. So you really are the input, and it's not always bad parenting. Sometimes it's odd connections. You learn to walk, and that same day your mother leaves for the first time for the hospital to deliver another baby, and you're displaced. So those connections, you know when you begin to speak to first graders, you hear that they begin to question. And it's such an exciting process.
Why?
Oh,
Yeah.
why? And that develops, and it develops sequentially from conception to age 7, and the rest is revision. And of course, you see, even as soon as nursery school, they're those kids who have mastered the room. They walk in, they know how to make themselves at home. They, have abundant responses from the world around them. And you see those children that don't. And that's already the ego formation. But the child who doesn't say, oh, this is because I struggle a little more with attention, or this is because I had no breakfast. There's no breakfast in my house. They have no way of contextualizing, which is why what this teaches you to do is recontextualize, because the way your ego, your prism is formed is what you see. You find what you're looking for. And we tend to, a wonderful woman named Dr. Candace Pert really showed how she discovered the opioid receptor, and she showed how we really look for those same triggers in our lives. And so we can't think outside the box. I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take this off.
That's
We
totally
can't
fine. I appreciate you for being a fun sport and putting it on.
we can't think outside the box. And I hate that term, because we are the box. You're held together by your habits, and you're also limited by your habits and your beliefs and your structure. We want structure. It allows us to function. But when we want to grow and change, that structure sometimes can get in the way. And it's not always, I have a bad taste of people always looking at what's wrong with them. No, look at what's wrong with your life. What's missing from your life? It could be a real thing, like a high paying job or a great partner, or it could be something like pleasurable experiences. Yeah, you're doing, my sister who suicided used to say, my life is great, I'm the problem. But those receptors for pleasure were never opened. So what the prism really is forget looking for your trauma. What is it you want? And now notice where in the ego that thing is located. And there really is a location. And do one tiny thing and notice what changes, because I like evidence-based things, because otherwise we just get lost in ourselves, and we can always find what's wrong with us.
Totally. Totally. So, okay, for instance, me, I would say that I had a really wonderful childhood. And I would say that my trauma happened later in life. And I think that the challenge for me was it questioned all of those things inside of me that I had to figure out and be able to adjust within my life because my brain and body wasn't used to or had experienced coping with something like
But I've
that.
tracked your trauma, and you've coped
Mm-hmm.
very well. And you coped very well in part because you did have a solid childhood. But one of the exercises in the book is to do a scan because we
Mm-hmm.
all, when we want more, we need to evolve even past what we were given. And so there are probably a tiny percentage of people who are always able to do that, and they usually have pretty solid childhoods. But like if I look at your energy, so I would say one of the exercises is from the top of your head to the base of your spine, without overcomplicating, without magicalizing, where do you sense tension? Right now, I want to know
Mm-hmm.
from you, where do you sense tension?
Right
And
now,
you
I would
notice.
say, and I don't normally have this, but right now it's like through my back, like almost by my bra strap.
Okay. So that may be something, there may be something temporary, an anniversary that's
Mm-hmm.
coming up that kind of pulls your heart. So that's what I call a temporary ego challenge. Where I see the ego challenge in here, in you, is here. And this is
Wow.
really interesting because it's about having a voice in the world, being able to be in conversation, and then leadership. So if I see that, and this is what the Prism shows you how to do, if I see that, I would say lifelong,
Mm-hmm.
your question is, what is my unique voice, not influenced by my family or my religious or societal upbringing? What's my unique voice? How can I use it in conversation without hurting anyone, without disappointing anyone, clearly, in a way people will hear me, in a way that maybe I can see myself even more clearly as I mature? And then leadership. What does leadership with my uniqueness look like? So
Yeah.
most of us, so my habitually challenged center is my sixth, is observation, intellect, intuition. I took care of three children under the age of 5 when I was 5. I lived in a separate apartment from my parents. And
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have the ability to do that. But luckily, I had a very ADHD, no executive function brain. And so I was able to get the information. But what I skipped over, because I didn't have normal ego development, I skipped over the
Mm-hmm.
ability to observe. I am the least observant person, and it blindsides me. And I didn't develop my intellect. I am not interesting at a dinner table unless unless you want to ask me questions about the future. But my intellect is underdeveloped despite the fact that I'm smart. So that's something that I constantly work on. Let me observe what's going on now, not what's in the future, because when you react to the future in the now, you're out of time. It's like doing the wrong dance step. Everyone else is doing a plie and you're jumping already. It doesn't work. So
Mm-hmm.
so it really does show you. So little things that I do are, for example, taking a moment to make sure that I'm present and just
Yeah.
noticing, what color is the room? What are you wearing? Um,
Yep.
what you might need to do is interrupt me more. You know, practice your voice. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm. I love learning from you and listening to you. I actually do that a lot with my clients. I'll have them sometimes look to the right or look to the left and I'll ask them what's on the wall. And like I can I can look at any of these pieces on my shelves and I can tell you the story behind what it is. Or I can look at this, pencil or pen holder that I have right in front of me. And my sister gave it to me for my birthday one year. And so looking around the room and recentering yourself is a beautiful way to be able to come back to the present, because usually every object around you, or at least in your home, does have a story, whether it's a small story or a big story. And being able to come back to the present is a beautiful way to be able to calm your nervous system and to be able to come back to
But see,
center.
that's a really good sign that you have a good sixth ego center,
Mm-hmm.
because I have lived in the same apartment for 43 years and I
Mm-hmm.
still can't recall it when I'm away for a few days. It's very hard for me the to bring something back. And actually, I've worked hard on it. I didn't have a lot of object permanence, really, in many ways. That's something that I've really worked on. So it's interesting how, and that's why it's so wonderful to work in community. Is what's easy for you is hard for me. Big
Totally.
voice. I was raised by a manic depressive mother who would sometimes forget to put clothes on when she walked out the door. Like nothing worries me. I had a lot of freedom to express that voice. Um, it was easy to be a leader because I had younger children. I had no choice. This ego center works great on me. This one doesn't. And that's why when we get together, we're such great teachers for each other. And, even in the
Mm-hmm.
experience, for example, I just got the final copy yesterday, so I love holding this up. But even in the,
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful
thank
cover. It
you.
really is.
Um, Even in the experience of promoting this book, which I really this is I write a book to have a textbook to be able to teach with.
Yeah.
So it's
Mm.
important to me. But even in that experience, so many of the students who created this book, because I've been working with them for 10 years on the system, someone did something for my website and someone else said, oh, you need to do this. And here's how to do a video. And this has to be 60 seconds. And, we forget that we have a community and we forget that we all have strengths. And part of there's so much about spirituality, but spirituality is oneness, and
Mm.
oneness creates nothing. your
Mm.
your courage to be an individual creates. And I really people fall in love with intuition because there's something that's very comforting about telling the
Totally.
future or being able to send a
Totally.
thought or know what someone's doing. But actually, and I'm sure, I know you and I agree with this, your power is actually in the present. And
Mm-hmm.
because we're so rarely in the present, because the present demands that we do something and can be very uncomfortable, because we're so rarely
Yes.
in the present, I've noticed people think they're far more powerless than they are. And the reality is,
Mm.
a tiny change changes your whole life. But again, the reason I write self-help, and I think the reason that you do what you do, is that that change can't really come from inside of you. It needs to come from trying on, having a prosthetic exoskeleton, trying on,
Trying new things on, getting out of your comfort zone
also
and
out of your awareness,
experiencing.
picking something
Yeah.
up, opening to something. Oh, that's so funny. I opened to the sixth ego center. Picking
Ah,
something up, opening to it and saying, it's not dangerous. So I'm going to try it. And I'm not only going to
yeah.
try it, but I'm going to document what happens, because
Mm-hmm.
everyone magicalizes. We have all these words like manifestation, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
We have all these things that we magicalize, and we're our magic wands.
Yeah.
You are what's magic. And just because you've walked into the same wall 30 times doesn't mean that if you try something else on, and it may be in your comfort zone, you just never visited that zone, but you try something else on, notice what happens. And, you know, you didn't realize that the wall was here, but you were just seeing here, free space all over, all over.
Would you say that your intuitive knowledge or your intuitive being, would you say that that is something that came naturally to you in terms of like, because I feel as though, and I'm projecting here, but like or assuming that, like, in order to have that intuition, it's something that not only innately you need to feel, but you also need to trust in order to help support others, right? In order to say, this is what's coming through for me, or this is intuitively, excuse me, what I feel, right?
So trust is something I don't have and I don't believe in. I'm way too traumatized
Mm.
for trust. If something
Huh.
doesn't, if I had not started by being a test subject and seeing the data on what the percentage was, I never would have done this. I
Wow.
have a very damaged brain. So crossing a street, I have to be really careful to be present because I have no idea what's around me.
Mm-hmm.
My husband's an adventurer, and he would love to say, "Pack a bag, we're going somewhere." Not a thing to do with me. I need the map. I need to know you're not going to leave me alone for a second. I need to know exactly where I'm staying. I need the layout of the room because that is how, neurologically different my brain is from what actually functions in the world.
It needs to feel the safety.
It's not about a feeling. It's that I don't know where I am in space and time, which is,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I love my apartment, but I know it because I've lived here for 43 years. But
Sure.
but it's so I wouldn't say trust. I would say
Mm.
I, one of the wonderful things, if you survive early damage, which my
Mm.
siblings did not, but one of the wonderful things, if you do survive, is that your pathology becomes your potential. It has to, or you wouldn't survive.
Mm.
So I didn't form a self. I didn't remember to eat. I didn't know what my favorite color was. I could adapt to anything, but I didn't really experience a lot. But I could
Hmm.
see what was going on, and I had an intuitive ability to put myself in the right place at the right time. It wasn't satisfying. And I've worked very
Hmm.
hard to on my ego to be a human being who says I want to create this, not this is the
Yeah.
best thing. Intuition says this is the safest, this is blah blah blah, this fits this criteria. No, this is what I choose, and I'm going to create it, and I'm going to learn, and I may have to adapt it as I learn. But I have no trust. One of the reasons I love working for companies is
Yeah.
if you're wrong, they fire you. They're not subjective the way people are.
Yeah.
They're not impressionable. You're either
Yeah.
right or wrong.
Black and white. Mm-hmm.
And there's something for me that's very reassuring because otherwise I'm seeing things other people don't see and hearing things other people don't hear. And there's a diagnostic code and antipsychotics for that. So
Right.
I'm very careful, and I would say that on one hand, it's an incredible gift, but when you have it to the degree I have, it's also an incredible disability. I feel sorry. That's my coffee machine. Life. It is so wonderful how life happens. The mask, the coffee machine, um, but I do feel other people's pain as if it were my own. So I'm very easy
Mm.
to take advantage of. I have very bad boundaries. I
Mm.
don't read a room, so I'm overly direct, and sometimes that's not very nice for the people around me. I'm usually right. That's also not very nice for the people around me. Um,
Or comfortable for them, I
but
would say,
also
right?
not nice. People have the
Mm.
right to their own journeys, and
Mm.
it is not, I've learned and I'm still working on, not saying what I know.
Mm. Huh.
Um, but what's so important, I think that my motivation for the Prism is I realized I had been given something. I'm the least
Mhm.
educated in my family. My brother, who put a gun in his mouth and ended his life, graduated from Harvard, graduated from Stanford with a master's in physics, graduated from the University of Virginia with a master's in business. I am the least smart, the least educated in my entire family. My sister went to law school, went to Columbia Law School. I mean, the but because because I was in crisis before I was an I, and because my brain was structured to be able to let perceptions in that most brains let out, don't
Huh.
allow, that this helped me create. I have a loving marriage. I have a wonderful son. I have a wonderful career, good health. I have wonderful homes. I have enough of everything. That doesn't mean that I don't still wake up in the morning, with that terror and have to say, oh, wait, no, I'm not a child anymore. It's a couple minutes, I'm not a child.
Mhm.
If everything's okay now. And let me notice, what am I working on at this point in space time? What are my goals? And then I make some small shift. And I go on Instagram every day. People think, oh, you're so
Mhm.
generous. You're teaching for free. No, 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 no. I need to feel our unity. We heal each other. We intuitively read each other. I need to be part of something because I love, I want, I create, I hope for, I hate, my I was so damaged that it's precarious alone.
Wow. Wow. So, um, in that time that you go on every day to Instagram, um, would you say individuals are looking for something from you, or is it more of a community sense that everyone is um, supporting everyone, if you will?
I think everyone's supporting everyone. I think I'm an epicenter, but
Mhm.
we all exchange. We all have three goals written down, and that this is part of the Prism. And my group, this Instagram group, has been doing the work for 10 years,
Wow.
and they're numbered 1, 2, and 3. I pick a number. I don't look at it to rule out telepathy,
Mhm.
even though the better students they kind of know what number it is anyway. And you tag someone and you do a reading, you predict, you notice, and because and I have a lot of on Laura Day Circle on YouTube. I have a lot of instructional videos, and on Instagram. So even if you haven't, a lot of these people are advanced students, and because I don't take civilians as clients,
Yeah.
I refer them to my advanced students who are, once I find that they're both ethical and capable.
Sure.
So the way that I see that they're accurate, because I don't want to drink more water, open your heart. I want, in about 2 weeks, I see an initial R. Someone's going to come and fund a business that you've been like, I want to see
Wow.
their data, because you don't want, belief is tricky. Belief is something for people who are already so safe that they can afford it. But that's not
Mm.
most of us. Most of
Mhm.
us need tools, and
Yeah.
most of us need things we can either prove or disprove. So we go on, we exchange readings, we suspend the illusion of separateness with our goals as a prism, as a structure, so that we're semi permeable, not completely permeable. You don't want to merge with everything in this physical or energetic world, and we create together, and it's amazing what we create together. And the Prism, um, really, it follows the chakras, although it's not the chakras. It really is. You want to be paid more? That's fourth ego center, your value. You want better luck? That's sixth ego center, because if you can see ahead, then luck is really just strategic planning. I mean, life is causal, and I just, one of the things I'm always getting on people for, don't magicalize it. Life is causal. We don't always know what caused things, but we know it's causal. And I don't think I could have written this book at 30. I
Huh.
didn't have enough life experience. I hadn't walked into enough walls.
Mm.
I was able, and I didn't have enough students, because I find I really have to try things out on thousands of people to get the kinks out.
Totally.
Um, I don't think I could have done it at 30. It was I'm so excited, really, to teach this process and to have my students teach it. I mean, I write these as textbooks
Yeah.
so that other people can teach. And I think, you have a medium where you can support people, and I'm very grateful for your support. I also have that.
Mhm.
And so I have people who are healers or psychotherapists or even physicians who are who now can take this work, and I can send them people because of course you want a therapist who's intuitive. You want a
Mhm.
doctor who's intuitive. You don't want an intuitive who's playing doctor. You don't want an intuitive who's playing therapist, you
Mm.
know.
That's a
But,
good explanation of that,
you know,
a rule of thumb, if you will.
yeah, so it really does. I have my students are so much more, uh, most of them are far more educated than I am, and they are licensed. They're social workers, they're therapists, they're doctors, they're financial managers. So I think it's really the whole field of intuition, I think, is one to be very careful of because there is, my father, grandfather, great grandfather, they were doctors. If they made a mistake, you could sue them.
Mm.
I don't exist.
Mm. Mhm.
There's no
Mhm.
ethical board.
Mhm. Mhm. Tell me one of your biggest takeaways that you would love to share with everyone from writing this book. I know that's a loaded question. I don't love questions like that when people ask me like what's the one takeaway, but it just
Well,
came out.
I think the one takeaway is we actually fall in love with our pain.
Hmm.
Us attached to someone or something that before we even knew what it was, before we had intellect or words, was important and life saving for us, or at least we thought it was. A miracle takes a moment,
Mm.
but it does take something new. It takes, it takes a therapist with an outside idea and a way to usher you into it. It takes a new process that you can just try on a tiny
Yeah.
bit. A miracle takes a moment. A fraction of a degree of climate change
Mhm.
creates a change all around the world.
Yeah.
So, so a volcano in Hawaii for years changes the climate all over the world.
Yeah.
So you can do that too. You're really mechanical. You're a mechanical being in a mechanical world. There are rules to it. And when you learn the rules that perhaps you didn't learn in childhood on how to operate this magnificent, complex being, this vehicle for creating anything that is you, no
Yeah.
matter how pond slimy you may be feeling or this moment may be, you can create anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. Will you tell everyone where they can find you? The book is called The Prism. I just got it in the mail actually last night. And so I was flipping through it last night and I honestly cannot wait to dig in. There's just so much good you can tell in this book that's very tangible tools, not just self-help in terms of finding yourself or this or that. It's very tangible tools.
Well, I really like the do this and this will happen.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't work, why we all have our own philosophies.
Mhm.
If we believe Einstein, if we believe all of the physicists, all time is now. So
Yeah.
the highest octave of you already exists. You don't need more tools to be stuck in yourself. You
Mhm.
need something tiny, like let me notice when I need to say no and I'm saying yes. And just for one day, even if I don't say no, let me say nothing. Let me
Yeah.
not do it. Your whole life changes in that way. It is so incredible how a tiny change makes a difference.
It's very
You
true.
can find me on Laura Day Intuit on lauraday.com. If you search Laura Day Psychic, you can find me. Um, a Laura Day Circle on YouTube, and I will be posting a lot of exercises. And exercises, I mean, this puts you in the state to have this change. One of the
Mhm.
things I want to say about the Prism is we have all this stuff that we're supposed to do for
Mhm.
20 minutes,
Mhm.
meditate and exercise and breathe and blah blah blah. You wouldn't have time for a day. this is not a book that you're meant to sit down and do and practice. This is something where this is not working. Let me find which ego center it is. Let me find one thing to do today and let me change it.
I love
While
that.
you're doing your life, you do the process.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I say all the time, yes, meditating and box breathing and journaling, it works. It's supportive. It helps. But not everyone has time for that, nor do we have the discipline or the drive or the want to make those our tools and make those our things, right? There's other ways to go about supporting yourself within your life and making small little changes by doing other things, not just the status quo of what we deem to be supportive, if you will.
Or box breathe while do your mask while you're doing
Yes.
your
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah.
Box breathe while you're clipping your toenails.
Yep.
You really can add things. Like my husband and I, we love to work in bed because we have that closeness that really doesn't need words all the time
Mm-hmm.
anymore. But we also need to get our work done. And
Yeah.
it's not multitasking. Multitasking is the greatest, mind F in the world.
Yeah.
Um, it's really saying, you know what, life can be satisfying, and it's my job while it's being productive. It's my job now. It was my parents' job. It was even society's job, but maybe that didn't happen, or maybe it did happen, but not quite in the way I need it now.
Yeah.
It is my job now, and I have the tools, and the tools are the prism. The tool is the ego.
I can't wait to read it. I'm really, really excited. It sounds honestly fantastic. And it's really what individuals need, is to be able to understand and be able to have quick changes, or to be able to reframe, and the method behind it and understanding the reasons behind it is so important. And it sounds like you very much do that in the book, of explaining the why.
And I really look forward to being on your show today because you actually really have done that in your life. You are a very good example of the prism at work. Perfect lives aren't perfect. Resilient lives are amazing. We are our own magic wands, and you have done that for your family and you've done that for yourself. So I was really looking forward to this today.
Thank you for saying that. It's been a journey and a hard road, but like such a beautiful road at the same time. Like, hard doesn't necessarily mean bad. I love what you said earlier. Some people like attach to their pain and then they identify with it. I more so want to be able to honor it, feel it, and then move past it and learn from it, or grow from it, or shift and change from it. And it doesn't come overnight, but I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm sure we will do more again, and I love you for putting on a face mask. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So good.
I can't rub my face yet, but in a few hours I will be able to take this off. But until next time, XOXO, Dr. V.